And now, the case of the missing Hitchcocks. Alfred Hitchcock's movies are among the most famous thrillers ever made, but 5 of his movies haven't been seen anywhere for years because Hitchcock controlled the rights and he held them off the market until his death, but now they're back.
And we'll look at these 5 classic movies on a special program called Dial H for Hitchcock, with scenes from Rear Window starring James Stewart and Grace Kelly. Join us for this special show, Dial H for Hitchcock, on At the Movies, the movie review program.
5 of Alfred Hitchcock's classic thrillers have been held out of release for years, but now they're back in theaters around the country. And we'll take a look at these movies, including Rear Window, on a special show called Dial H for Hitchcock. It's this week at the movies, the movie review program. Five of Alfred Hitchcock's classic thrillers on Dial H for Hitchcock. This week at the movies, the movie review program.
Stuff looks like Gatorade shooting out of there. Nancy Allen shooting down a green-blooded alien in Strange Invaders, one of 4 new fall movies we'll be reviewing this week on At the Movies, the movie review program. And across the aisle from me again this season, Roger Ebert, film critic of the Chicago Sun-Times.
And across the aisle from me, Gene Siskel, film critic of the Chicago Tribune. The other new autumn releases we'll be looking at include Daniel, starring Timothy Hutton as a young man looking into his parents' past lives, and Merry Christmas, Mr. Lawrence, with David Bowie as a British prisoner of war in Japan. And now Gene starts with a musical mystery about a 1960s rock and roller.
The movie is Eddie and the Cruisers, and it's a bit of rock and roll nostalgia mixed up with a mystery, asking the question what really happened that night in the early 60s when rock and roll star Eddie Wilson drove off a bridge and apparently died, but his body was never found. Yeah. Now, a journalist is trying to solve the mystery of Eddie and the Cruisers. She likes their music, and we spent a lot of time in flashes back to the 60s listening to the band creating their hits. In this scene, the band gets a new songwriter.
On the dark side, oh yeah.
Not bad.
What?
I said not bad.
Not bad? Eddie, what's with you? The kid can't play, he can't sing, and he can't write. So what's not bad?
He's got something we need.
Like what?
Words and music, Doc. Words and music. All right, now let's get on with the music. See what I'm doing? Do it like I'm doing it. It's rock and roll. Right? Do that. Yeah, come on. Go. Go, go. See?
You got it, Frankie. Yeah. Yeah. You got it. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Get on there.
And now it's a band, and that's their song. As enjoyable as the film is, this film turns out to be much ado about nothing, really. What really happened is not revealed precisely at the end of the picture, and we walk out of the theater feeling like we were sort of played for suckers. Also, the film fails to explain what really made Eddie and the Cruisers so special, so worthy of this film. They're a decent rock group. They have one certifiable hit song. If it came out today, that was it. But one song isn't enough to justify a movie, particularly this movie.
I kind of agree with you. I thought it was a real disappointment. I'm not surprised, though, that Eddie and the Cruisers were big in the movie, as you seem to be, because I like the music all the way through, and it's done, by the way, on the soundtrack by an East Coast musician named John Cafferty, who was really good, and I like the soundtrack of this movie, but I'd never like to see it again because the ending is so anticlimactic. I mean, we're waiting for this big, enormous, earth-shaking revelation, and what happens is just a dumb plot twist.
Yes, and all the characters that we meet en route to the ending, all the people that belong to his band who are getting together for some kind of reunion, they're all waiting too about something about a missing tape or something like this. And you're right, so every character's waiting, we're waiting, and then it's nothing at the end. A better soundtrack than a script.
Big anticlimax. Next at the movies, Strange Invaders, in which bug-eyed monsters invade a downstate Illinois town and nobody notices.
Oh no, forgot my keys. I gotta get to that phone. Maytag washes are built to last longer and need fewer repairs. I don't get too many calls. Maytag repairman. Mom! Oh, you called because you thought I might be lonely, huh? No problem, Mom. No problem.
Not all Maytag repairmen are this lonely, but we're trying. Maytag. We also make ranges, microwave ovens, and dishwashers.
We're taking away Mrs. Fahey's Clorox bleach for 1 month.
How was your wash without Clorox?
Dull.
Then we asked her to compare items she washed with Clorox a month ago.
The towel that I washed with Clorox looks like a new towel. The towel without the Clorox still looks dirty. It looks like I have to wash it again. If you do it right the first time with Clorox, you don't have to worry about it looking dingy.
Clorox takes away dirt detergents leave behind.
Do you want your Clorox back?
I do. Thank you very much.
Introducing Easy Beta from Sony.
Norman Betamax.
A simple idea in video cassette recorders.
Norman, play. Norman, freeze.
Every function is controlled by a single touch.
Norman, Beta scan. Norman, what's up?
So if you thought VCRs were complicated, Sony made them a touch easier.
Norman.
Easy Beta. Simply amazing because it's amazingly simple.
Behind this curtain is something awful, something ugly, something that may be in your home right now. Creepy black mildew stains right there in your shower. It's time you get them before they get to you. With Tilex Instant Mildew Stain Remover. With Tilex, there is no scrubbing. You just spray and leave. Mildew stains begin to disappear on contact. In minutes, they're gone. Tilex, it gets mildew stains before they get to you.
Our next movie is Strange Invaders, a really weird movie that's sort of a cross between Invasion of the Body Snatchers and all those movies on the Late Show where you tune in right in the middle of the movie, but somehow even after one scene, you somehow sense with extrasensory perception that everybody on the screen is not a human being. The movie stars Paul LeMat as a college professor whose ex-wife goes back to a small Illinois town for a funeral, and then she disappears. LeMat goes looking for her. He becomes convinced that the town has been occupied by aliens from another world, and then he tries to convince a government UFO investigator, played by Louise Fletcher.
Well, this is odd. According to what we have, no one has lived in that town since 1958. when it was destroyed by a tornado. All right, Mr. Bigelow. I'm going to show you some drawings. These are renderings of the most commonly sighted aliens. I want you to look at them and tell me if you see anything that reminds you of the creature you saw last night on the road.
No. No.
I'm sorry, Mr. Bigelow. It's just a little joke we have around here.
Well, there are aliens in Centerville, though, all right. Lots of them. Ugly ones. You may have noticed a certain offbeat style in those two scenes. Strange Invaders is trying to do two different things at the same time. First, it's trying to look exactly like a fairly good 1950s science fiction movie, the kind you might have seen in a drive-in theater, right down to the salmon pink motel rooms and the plastic dinette sets. And then, at the same time, it's trying to be a comedy about 50s movies. And the neat thing is, it works. This is a funny movie. It's a little scary, and it has some great bug-eyed monsters in it. Now, how many movies can you say that about?
A lot of movies in the 50s. I think that you're right. In the beginning, it's very funny. The whole setup of this, the landing of the creatures in Centerville, their reactions initially, the return to Centerville, all very funny stuff, and I was laughing right along with it, and just the way you were. Where the film started to stop for me and have nowhere to go and no finish is just about at the point where we saw there, where this guy starts ripping off his mask, and I think, oh, it's another one of these special effects things done for kids who like to see goo and glop and inflated skin. I did not care about the aliens when they get ready to split from the scene, like I did in Close Encounters of the Third Kind or other pictures of that kind. And the human beings became almost as lifeless as the creatures.
I think the mistake you're making is to think the movie is about either the bug-eyed monsters or about the people. I think the movie is about movies. I think that when we're watching this, we're saying, gee, this is a reference to all those movies we've seen on The Late Show. And Paul Amat, who's a good actor, comes in there and he's kind of deadpan as all of this stuff happens, as if he's not quite connected in, he's not quite reacting strongly enough to all of these horrible things. And to me, the weak point is the fact that a movie like this has to have a payoff. I think everything slows down when the plot is resolved. It's more fun just having the behavior.
Well, but my point is that it's a movie about movies in the beginning, and it's a movie about current movies and glop at the end. And unfortunately, a movie about uninteresting aliens. Okay. Our next film is Daniel, a fictional account of the infamous Julius and Ethel Rosenberg spy case, told from the point of view of their children, their two children, 30 years later. The Rosenbergs, of course, were the accused spies for Russia in the 50s who were put to death in the electric chair for having been convicted in a much disputed trial of passing the Russians' atomic energy secrets. But the concern of this movie is not so much whether the Rosenbergs were guilty, but rather the effect that parents can have on children, and the difference between people who go along routinely with their lives and those persons who stand up for what they believe in. The film begins in the present day with the Rosenberg children. For fictional purposes here, they use the name Isaacson, and here the son and daughter argue in front of their adoptive parents about a foundation that the daughter wants to establish in her parents' name.
You can forget about the foundation. It doesn't need you. Go back to your life. Take this milk cow with you and go back home.
If this doesn't stop right now, I am not serving.
Go back to the stacks, Daniel. The world needs another graduate student.
I don't have to go out and get clubbed to justify my existence.
Why don't you just admit that you're a self...
Stop it, you two!
Susan, you're not handling this very well.
Yeah, she is. She's a revolutionary. She's been to the barricades. She's got all the answers. I mean, once it was sex. Sex was going to do it for you, right? Then it was acid. Acid was going to do it for you. Remember that, Susiana? Huh? And before that, it was God. You knew all about God. And now it's revolution. Oh, revolution! I thought we did that. I thought we'd been through that.
Susan.
I don't believe you.
Those are two very fine young actors there, Timothy Hutton from Ordinary People and Amanda Plummer. And that man that we saw in that insert shot, also at the dinner table, that's supposed to be her adoptive father. Well, one of the problems with the movie is that he looks so young, you can't believe him in a fatherly role. Now, the film alternates back and forth between present day and the 50s, and in this nostalgic scene from the 50s, young Daniel visits his father's radio repair shop and learns a bit about capitalism.
About everything Mommy asked for, Daniel? I see you got your favorite cereal. Who's on the back?
Joe DiMaggio.
Why do you suppose they put his picture on a box of cereal?
Because he's strong.
That's right. Now, although it doesn't say so in so many words, it puts an idea in your mind that if you eat this cereal, you'll be strong like he is. Yet if you look at the nourishment this cereal contains, you'd see you'd do better with ordinary oatmeal.
Oatmeal has lumps.
So they're lying. And that is what advertising is. Lying. Now, of course, not Joe DiMaggio. But one or another of your baseball heroes, he sells his name and his picture to the cereal company for money, saying he eats their cereal, when in fact, he probably drinks beer and he smokes cigarettes. Yeah, it's funny. But what is he but a worker, like anyone, who earns his bread by his labor? And the fact that he plays a game called baseball, that makes no difference. He is no better than the man who works in a factory. Do you know why?
Because he doesn't own the team.
That's right. You're very smart.
That's his real father there. I enjoyed this film very much. It has some problems, but it's quite emotional. Not on the issue of the Rosenberg's guilt, but rather, as I mentioned before, on the whole issue of taking responsibility for one's parents' legacy and for what one believes in. And in these days of social inaction, I found this story to be most powerful and certainly beautifully acted. I liked it a lot.
I didn't enjoy the film, and I'll tell you, my basic problem was I didn't know where to stand in relation to anything that was going on in this picture. Is it about the parents? Is it about the children? Is it about guilt? Now, the director, Sidney Lumet, said it doesn't matter if the Rosenbergs or the Isaacsons were guilty. I think it does matter, because there's a lot of evidence in this film that the woman went to the electric chair out of sympathy for her husband and not because she was guilty, if he was guilty. So if you don't know these things, and if they don't matter, then what's it about? Does it mean, is the message of the movie that, you can hardly wait to answer,
I know,
that nothing matters?
No, here, Raj. Just like you were challenging me just back on the science fiction film and saying it's about science fiction movies, not about what's really going on there. Let me tell you that I think the key here is that it is not about the Rosenberg case specifically. It is about the emotion that, and certainly the reaction that I had as I watched these kids stand up or not stand up for their parents, as I watched those people in the 50s stand up for what they believe in. The movie keeps hammering home and has a little ending with sort of a strange ending with Peace Marches Today. And I felt that the film was calling for action on what one believes in, coming alive.
Not at all. In fact, there's even a suggestion in this film that we're not even sure they believe in anything. There's a lot of speech making in this film that says they didn't know they were really communists or not, or whether they just wanted to belong and be part of this movement. They were true believers who didn't really act on convictions but on psychological needs.
I think that they act, again, now we go back to the case a little bit. I think that, but I want to go back to the movie. I feel that these people were acting out of a passion and a concern for other people, for their parents, for workers, that sort of thing, and I found it very fresh and exciting.
Well, we could continue this one, I think. Next at the movies, David Bowie, the rock star, is a Japanese prisoner of war. Our next movie is a prisoner of war drama called Merry Christmas, Mr. Lawrence. It's getting a lot of attention around the country because it stars David Bowie, the rock star, who's currently on tour around North America. I wonder if Bowie's fans are going to be surprised to find him in this thoughtful, difficult picture, a Japanese-British co-production that makes the two sides look more or less interchangeable in the war, something that I really have a problem with in this film. The movie takes place on Java in 1942, where both the British and the Japanese have basically two kinds of soldiers: patriotic militarists who are out to win at all costs, and pragmatic guys who are more looking out for themselves. In this scene, the blustering British commander, somebody that nobody likes, is being threatened by the aristocratic Japanese commander, while David Bowie and the troops look on.
How many experts in weapons and guns do you have in your group? None, sir.
Now here's an interesting thing. That scene we just saw was edited right before the end of the clip. A couple of shots were missing, but you couldn't really spot it unless you've seen the film, to remove what is probably the most crucial moment in this entire movie, and that's when David Bowie kisses that Japanese commander on the cheek so that he can simultaneously humiliate him in public and also acknowledge the attractions these two men feel for each other. Now, why did the studio take out that scene? Maybe because they thought it was too strong for us folks at home, I guess, but that's what the movie is about.
Sure.
It's not a war thriller. It's not a David Bowie movie. Merry Christmas, Mr. Lawrence is a serious film about human relationships, and it's on that level, I think, that the film fails, and I'll tell you how that happens. There's such a distracting contrast between two very different traditions of film acting in this film, between the British understatement and realism and the Japanese tradition in film of hysterical overacting, that what I never really believed was that all these characters were existing in the same level of reality. The British are like this, the Japanese are jumping around, it all just becomes an exercise in style.
Well, but you know, on the acting style, that really never bothered me, because I thought, well, the Japanese are acting this way, they're Japanese, and the British are acting this way, they're British.
Did it ever occur to you that in real life Japanese don't scream and shout and tear their hair the way they always do in the movie?
Why doesn't that bother you in Japanese pictures?
Because there are only Japanese in those pictures. That's what I said. The contrast between the styles is what threw me off.
Yeah, but there's another group of people in them. Let's get back to the movie.
Okay.
Here's one of the things that I thought that was so beautiful about the picture. I like the ending. The tables are switched at the end, the war is over, and suddenly the Japanese are prisoners and the British are holding them captive, and the British guy says to one of the Japanese, he says, "You are now in prison a victim of people who think they are right, just like you thought during the war that you were right." And I thought this turned out to be, in that final scene, a beautiful pacifistic film saying that the arrogance of thinking you're right culturally and internationally is what starts wars and gets us into trouble.
I think you may be the only person alive who thinks this film is pacifistic, including the director, but I totally disagree with your point, which is apparently that both the Japanese and the British were kind of equal in this war. I believe that in World War II is one of the few wars in which the Japanese were wrong and the British and the Americans were right.
I think they were, but he's talking not about this specific, this is not a documentary in World War II.
But this is a specific war.
This is a very specific film about what our attitudes are that get us into war, and why we are culturally separated, and why the kiss is so shocking.
Well, I think our attitude was when they bombed Pearl Harbor, we fought back. That's a pretty good attitude.
Don't get me in the position of Roger of defending the Japanese in World War II.
Well, don't get me in the position of agreeing that this is a pacifistic film.
Okay,
far from it.
We have a treaty on that, Potsdam or something. Coming up next at the movies, a movie oddity, a sequel to two of Burt Reynolds' most successful films that doesn't star Burt Reynolds.
The Bandit. What about the Bandit?
Yeah, Daddy. What about the Bandit?
Sit down.
Here's a trash bag like no other. The new Glad handle tie trash bag. One snap, you've got two handles. Just tie them together to close the bag tight. No twist ties to come off. The handles are tough, too. So this bag does a lot more than just hold the trash. This bag helps you get a handle on it. Real sensible. The new Glad handle tie trash bag makes that long haul to the curb seem shorter. Get Glad handle tie bags for your kitchen, too.
Now here he is, back again for the new season. Aroma, the educated skunk, sniffing out the worst movies of the week and dining on a walnut.
Do you know that they love walnuts? And if you're ever in the woods, you should bring a bag of walnuts around. It'll save you a lot of trouble.
Help me meet a lot of skunks.
That's right. It's appropriate, I think, that our stinker of the week go to the last and one of the worst sequels of this sequel-filled summer movie season. It's Smokey and the Bandit Part 3. Ugh. God. And even the bandit himself, Burt Reynolds, had the good sense to avoid spending much time in this mess. He appears in only a 2-minute fantasy scene at the end of the picture, and by that time, there isn't much of an audience left, with people being turned off by another stupid chase picture with Jackie Gleason as the fat sheriff driving through the South with a plastic shark on the hood of his car. This is a dreadful, racist motion picture, and I'm delighted to report that Smokey 3 has been a box office bust, and good news, it probably has killed off the series.
I hope so. Now let's take another look at the main movies on this program. Neither one of us liked Eddie and the Cruisers, an anticlimactic rock and roll saga, Two Thumbs Down, and then Splitsville. We split on Strange Invaders, the offbeat retread of 1950s science fiction films. Gene thought it was funny but boring. I thought it was funny but intriguing. We split again on Daniel with Timothy Hutton. Gene admired its portrait of people taking a stand. I thought both the characters in the movie were distractingly ambiguous. And another disagreement on Merry Christmas, Mr. Lawrence, the Japanese war drama. Gene thought it was an effective anti-war film. I thought it was a distracting contrast in acting styles.
Well, that's it for this week. Lots of disagreements. Next week, Roger and I have found something that we agree on. In a special program we call Dial H for Hitchcock, we'll look at the artistry of Alfred Hitchcock, which is again on view now with the national revival of 5 classic Hitchcock films that haven't been seen for years. That's next week, and until then, we'll see you at the movies.
Raisinets, plump, juicy raisins covered with delicious milk chocolate. Why not enjoy America's favorite movie time candy at home, too? At home or at the movies, it's Raisinets. Super Pop popcorn, a tender, delicious, nutritious snack at an economical price. Super Pop popcorn is the one snack you can't eat alone. Super Pop. Enjoy delicious all-natural Sous Bee honey at the table, not on it. Shape up any meal with Sous Bee honey in the no-drip table server.
A new movie named Eddie and the Cruisers begins right now in the present and flashes back to the dawn of rock and roll when a singer named Eddie Wilson, sort of a cross between Bruce Springsteen and John Lennon, is trying to break out of the rock routine and create a new sound. Eddie is a hero to the other members of his band, but when a record company refuses to release his new material, he drives off into the night in his Chevy convertible, and the next morning Eddie's car is fished out of deep water. They never find his body, though, and speculation grows that Eddie is still alive. Here's a scene set in the 1960s when Eddie, played by Michael Pare, is talking about his rock and roll dream.
What I want is songs that echo. The stuff we're doing now is like somebody's bed sheets. Spread them out, soil them, ship them out to laundry, you know? With our songs, I want to be able to fold ourselves up in them forever. You understand? That's the most you'll ever get out of me, word man.
One of the best things about Eddie and the Cruisers is that the music on the soundtrack, performed by an East Coast musician named John Cafferty, does more than live up to Eddie's description. But unfortunately, the movie itself doesn't live up to the music. After setting up an intriguing mystery around the missing Eddie Wilson, the movie never really delivers. Instead of a dramatic payoff, we get a real downbeat disappointment. But I like the music in Eddie and the Cruisers, and the performances too for that matter, just not the story. I'm Roger Ebert at the movies.